Good evening, everybody. Today we're here at Mark's shop with a special guest, Tony Alva, who came from Los Angeles to visit us. And we've also invited to join us a bunch of skaters who were something like the Z-Boys of Argentina back in the 70s. Javier Ferrari, who was, I think you were the first Argentine skateboard champion.
Yes, probably. Yeah.
That was a long time ago, but you managed to keep fit. And then on the left of Tony Alva is Wallace, who was also an awesome skater back in the 70s and early 80s, and then he turned out to create a skate rock band called Massacre. So thank you for joining us too. Elio, the owner of Mark's shop, is here with us too. Thank you for setting up this place for us. It's an amazing store with some amazing photographs of classic skateboarders. Ignacio Ponterio is another skater from the 80s who with me ran a radio program on Wednesdays about skateboarding that focuses on music and classic skateboarding. It goes on live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. here in Argentina on Radio Palermo. So we'd like to thank you again for being here with us. And first of all, I wanted to ask you, Tony, what is your experience so far here in Argentina? You've been here since last Friday. We saw you skate on Saturday afternoon with a bunch of Argentine skaters. Let us know how you feel about that.
Is this mic working? Check. Don't wreck yourself. Check yourself. Well, just arriving here on Friday was a very long flight, so fortunately the weather was really nice. Buenos Aires lived up to its name. The air was good. And Saturday was just probably one of the most amazing days I've ever had skateboarding here in South America. I mean, everything just came together. The weather was amazing. We had a lot of people show up to participate, as well as the fans that were there. The park was completely circled by people, and it was just really very exciting, but at the same time, the people were very respectful. You know, they're very, I've been to some Latin countries where the fans are not very manageable, and it can become almost even scary, you know, but the Argentinians, I think the whole attitude towards skateboarding is that they have a lot of love for it, a lot of love and a lot of respect. And I could feel that in the crowd. And as we started to skate, I realized that there was a lot of people there. There was a mix of generations. There was the young generation who was there and represented and sponsored by the same sponsor that I'm sponsored by Vans. And then there was the old school guys that had not ever quit skating and that were still there just to be a part of the environment. And it wasn't a competition at all. It was more of a, like what we would call an expression session, because everybody's there expressing themselves in a very positive way. And it just, you can feel it when you're skateboarding around an environment like that. It becomes a very, the positive vibe of something like that is contagious. You know, it goes from one person to the next until the whole group of guys skating is all like one big group of, like what I would call like a family. You know, it's like, it becomes a family. And the family to me is a connection to something that I would call a fellowship. And so I feel like, you know, not to give it too long of an answer, but I feel like it was there was like a spiritual vibe there. And so it was really, really a beautiful experience for me. I walked away from that whole day. I didn't feel tired. I felt like I still had a lot of energy, and I felt a sense of accomplishment. There's definitely a sense of accomplishment. So it was, like I said, one of the best days I've ever had skateboarding in South America. It was amazing.
Yeah, actually, it was pretty awesome to see you skating like long sessions for a long time without seeming to get tired at all, along with other Argentine skaters who were approximately your age too, and who also had long runs skating with you, even perhaps bumping into you.
Well, you know, I think the key to that is a lot of times what it is it takes a toll on you when you live a life that's kind of rough. Like if you eat bad food, you don't drink enough water, you're not really taking care of yourself physically, you're going to get tired easily. and probably not be able to do what we did that day or what I was able to accomplish is because of the fact that I don't smoke anymore. I used to smoke weed every day. I don't smoke pot. I never smoked cigarettes. I don't drink alcohol. I don't touch a drop of alcohol. I haven't had a drink in a little over 9 years, and my diet is very light. I try to eat healthy food, and I think that being near the water like that, the air felt pretty clean. It felt nice. It didn't feel like there was a lot of smoke and things from buses and cars, and I think that when you have an environment like that, it's conducive to having a nice, long session and not getting tired. But my conditioning has a lot to do with it. My conditioning is based on surfing, first and foremost, and on skateboarding, and I'm a musician as well. I mess around with the DJ thing. I play bass guitar in 2 bands, and it's given me like a future that's a little bit longer than some of my friends. A lot of my friends are not here anymore; they're dead, and then a lot of the other ones were in and out of prison for many years for basically the same things that I suffered from, and that was misusing my rights to freedom, which was it really focused a lot around drugs and alcohol and violence. We were really, really aggressive, and we used to fight with everybody, including the police. And a lot of people paid a huge penalty for that. But fortunately for me, the Holy Spirit that basically had my back led me to a higher power, and something that I always knew God was looking out for me. But when I was younger, I didn't realize it. So at this point in my life, I realized that it's just one day at a time, and that if I turn my life over to something bigger than myself, which I call God, then I have a good day every time. Every time I have a good day.
You come a long way. You've been skating for perhaps 4 decades, and you've been one of the greatest influences to a sport, all sports considered. I think you're one of the persons who has made what skateboarding is today.
Well,
where do you see skateboarding and surfing to in the next 2 or 3 decades?
No, I don't really look at it that way. I stay in the moment. I'm not a future tripper, because like to trip out on the future kind of takes away from being in the moment. I'm more like a little bit more of a Buddhist philosophy, is that I like to stay in the moment and be in the present, because that's like basically what the grace and the love of something like having, like I said, like a relationship with an all-loving, compassionate God, is that I have to stay in the moment and have gratitude for just what is here right now. Because if I start thinking about the future too much, I'm expecting and not accepting what God's will is for me, and then that way I start to get confused and sometimes angry because things aren't happening the way I think they should be happening. So the best way for me to be really happy is right now, here and now, to be content. As they say in Spanish, tranquilo. Just stay calm, and be happy for what is happening right now. And as far as the future, for skateboarding, it's always been technology takes it farther and farther, but sometimes it has a tendency to take it too far away from the roots, from the grassroots of skateboarding, which the grassroots are very important. You can't have flowers and fruit without the roots. It's just like a tree. When the roots are not getting enough water and enough love, there's no fruit, there's no flowers. So that's the same thing with skateboarding. If you get too far away from the roots, then all you've got is dry branches with no leaves and no flowers. And that's metaphorical. In English, it's maybe hard to translate to Spanish sometimes. But don't forget about tending the roots. The roots are very important. And you guys know from being old school skateboarders that as long as you have that traditional connection to where skateboarding came from, where it started, and you don't lose it, and you refine that technique and the tradition, then it's still fun. And the moment that you lose that, you're on the wrong path, and it's not about being the best competitively, it's more about where your heart is at and where, if you have gratitude. And the gratitude is what puts a smile on your face.
Skate for fun is the motto of our program. If you're not having fun, don't do it. So the roots of skateboarding are actually surfing. You were a surfer as a small kid who actually wanted to become a pro as a surfer. That's why you started skating, right?
Yes, exactly.
You were very young. How old were you? 12, 13 years old?
10.
10 years old.
When actually.
Jay Adams was even younger than you. He was
Yes.
3 years old.
He was 5.
How, how was that relationship in the beginning? Did he look up to you as a?
Jay was the kind of guy to really look up to a lot of people. He was a very genuine and he was very confident in what he did, and the fact that he was a really good surfer even when he was a young child was a gift. You know, he was a natural. He's naturally talented at that. So skateboarding, when we started skateboarding and doing what we wanted to do on waves, on concrete, that's when it started to progress. And Jay was a leader in that area. But he was also a bit of a kid, you know, in the fact that he was slow to change. Like, we couldn't get him to wear shoes skateboarding for a long time. He didn't want to wear shoes. He did a lot of things where he would just spontaneously go in a direction but not be able to complete the maneuver. So he wasn't one of the most consistent skateboarders in the world, but he was definitely one of the most experimental and revolutionary. But some of the older guys, like Bob Biniak and Wenzel Rummel, Stacy Peralta, those were the guys that were really beginning to do things that nobody had ever done before. And I just fell into that group of those guys, and we were the ones that were able to start to execute maneuvers that had never been done before, especially in empty swimming pools and stuff.
And actually, you are credited for being the first skater who actually did an aerial. How did that happen? Was it just by chance? Did you see it coming?
It was just spontaneous. It was just about hitting the lip super hard. And when you hit the lip that hard, if you can grab your board, you're going to go into the air. And obviously, harnessing and manipulating gravity is not an easy thing. But I had a technique from surfing that adapted to skateboarding pools. And I was able to learn a technique where I would grab around my knee. And when I grabbed the board, I would pull it out and then let go and like ollie back in, like early release. They say, you know, that people weren't doing ollies and all that stuff back in the 70s. That's bullshit. We used to do ollies all the time. We didn't do them the way that they do them on the street, but we were doing no-handed aerials. Yeah. And you had to, because if you didn't know how to get back into the pool without your hands on the board, like with no hands, you were going to end up in the hospital or seriously injured, like every time you tried to do an aerial. So even though the photographers didn't maybe document that part until sequences came into play, we were doing no-handed aerials and all that shit back in the 70s, way before street skating started doing that stuff. So.
Yeah, and the frontside tuckney is probably your signature trick. We saw some skaters doing
I
it.
wouldn't call it a trick. I would basically call it a fundamental part of skateboarding, because to just do an aerial had never been done before. And so for me, what I was doing was establishing a compulsory move. It was compulsory to skateboarding to be able to eventually fly in the air. And whether it was frontside or backside, it was just an aerial. So it became like not so much a trick as an actual move. And as you see, surfers are copying that same style and that same maneuver when it comes to surfing nowadays. They're 40 years late, but it doesn't matter. I mean, they're still doing it. And they're doing airs. And the most stylish way to do any aerial is not between the legs. Between the legs, we call that stink butt, which is considered muy feo. It's ugly. So when you do the tuck knee, that's the most stylish way to do an aerial. And I was fortunate enough to be the first guy that had a photograph taken of me doing that.
So as a very young kid, early teenager, you tasted success very early. You were known all over the world. You probably made money already. You managed to finish high school. You had your first skate company at 19 years old.
That was a miracle.
How did that happen?
They really just kicked me out. They said, like, here's your diploma, get the fuck out of here, and like kicked me out. Excuse my English language there.
So you said once that you like skating with skaters who skating in pools that were not made for skateboarding.
Yeah,
what does that represent to you?
Because pools are like a concrete wave. All they are is a concrete wave. They're a stationary wave. They were the best representation of what we were looking for as surfers. We're looking for the perfect wave. I mean, where do you get a more perfect wave than an empty swimming pool? You don't. Because it's going like a perfect just like the lip of a whip. Especially if it's a pool that goes with a hip, or one that has like a kind of a sexy shape, like a lady, you know, like this. That's the best. We were always looking for sexy shapes, you know. The beautiful.
24 hours open.
Well, our pools were what I say all the time is they had sexy curves. They're very much like South American women.
I mentioned to you earlier that Bennett Arada wrote to me, and he said something that caught my attention. He told me that when he was very young, you taught him to sweep the pool and respect the pool.
Yes, that's true. Well, because that's the law of karma. Anytime that you do something positive or good, you get good back. Like if you just want to think you're going to show up at the pool and not do any work and just drop in and skate and not do any work, basically you haven't paid your dues, number one. Two, you're creating kind of a bad karma, a little bit of a wall of like a half measure kind of thing. The thing that I saw was that if you actually want to come and skate the pool, then you help us clean the pool. That way when you help clean the pool, it kind of gives you that little blanket of good karma around you, you know?
Skateboard Zen.
Yeah, it's a part of the deal. I mean, like, you don't just show up and just go, hey, I'm here to skate after we did all the cleaning. That was like, you know, kind of like, no, dude, you take it easy over there for a little while, you know? And our crew was a lot of tough guys. There was some animosity towards each other occasionally, but, you know, we reinforced our authority with our fists, you know, and there was like a lot of times people would show up, and if they weren't welcome and they didn't leave, they got beat up. We would beat them up right there and then throw them out and tell them not to come back. So, you know, it was very aggressive in the 60s and 70s. We didn't carry knives and guns and stuff. We were just full on, like, you know, fighters. And so if something happened, that's the way it went down. When we turned into playing punk rock music and stuff, same thing. That's how Suicidal Tendencies started, and everything was, we were like a gang. And the guys, like, were a gang in the sense of, like, if you went against the grain, you got the shit beat out of you. So that's just the way it is. That's the law back then.
What would be your iconic skate music?
Originally, it was Jimi Hendrix and like Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. And then eventually it changed to more like Black Flag and the Circle Jerks. And then I think nowadays music for me is a little bit of everything. I like to listen to even jazz. I love Jaco Pastorius, the bass player. I really love. There's some musicians that are just so amazing that I dream about someday being able to play like them. But the bottom line is that I don't necessarily have to be that person when I can just really enjoy it, because just listening to music is almost like being in love. You know, you fall in love with it, and it almost makes you want to cry when you hear a song that is so beautiful that it touches your heart. You know, and there was a lady here earlier that I was playing music for her, one of my favorite songs, and we both were almost in tears because it was so beautiful. And it's a song like a Pakistani prayer with reggae music connected to it, and it's really very like talking to God through music.
What's the name of it?
It's a song by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, who is a Pakistani singer, and it's a Qawwali dub song that Chebi Saba mixed for him. That's an old folkloric song that comes from Pakistan, but it's all connected to reggae music through this European producer, DJ, Chebi Saba, who he just died just a couple of years ago.
So in the early 80s, when you were with the Z-Boys, here in Argentina, skaters were frowned upon. We had a military regime, civil liberties were a little bit restrained. There were no skate parks, no skate shops. It was really difficult to get the equipment. It was tough to get photographs, no videos. Perhaps Wallace and Javier want to share the experience at the time and how you looked up to Tony Alva and his fellow skaters.
Turn the mic on over the mic.
Well, Johnny.
Oh, that's good. Nice.
Well, first of all,
That's the wrong
thanks.
start mic. That's the
Yeah, it's more rougher. First of all, thanks a lot for coming and visit us. You're a strong influence for us kids. And
The funny thing is, you guys are still kids to me.
You are what they now call a role model for us. Role model for us.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank we just want to thank you for give us an identity and something to feel in our lives as kids. That's very important. I'd like to ask you something. I remember a picture of you in the Action Now magazine, a very small black and white picture of you, with short hair and sunglasses. And the picture reads, Tony, almost a circle shark, Alva. Tony, almost a circle shark, Alva. What's that?
I'm not sure what it means, but the funny thing is, the original guitarist from the Circle Jerks and I have a punk rock band now that's been together for about, well, I've been playing with Greg Hetson from the Circle Jerks in our punk band. So I'm still almost a Circle Jerk, but it was probably about, you know, punk rock music and skateboarding and how they came close to being like kind of the same thing, but there was always a separate identity, I would think. But like I said, Greg Hetson and I play in a band called GFP. That's all original punk rock music, and so I feel like that vibe that came from punk rock music that's connected to the reason that I still play music and the reason that I skateboard and everything. It's kind of come full circle, and so to be able to play music and be in a band with Greg